This is my nephew's car, so that means it's my brother's kid. He's going to tell you about this situation with this strut and why it needs it.
Yeah, so I just got my strut blown on the driver's side, but it just pretty much when you're driving it just ends up jostling around a lot, and it's not absorbing the impacts quite as well, which will end up eating up your tread eventually, so it's time to replace it. But this is my 335i E92 for 2007. It's a JB4 tuned with ESR RF2s and all that fun stuff.
So that means it's a twin turbo model, and
Yep.
it's
Twin turbo, and it makes probably a little under 400.
manual transmission.
6-speed, sports package, premium package.
Nice. And did you notice the strut go out yourself? Did you notice a difference in drivability?
Yeah, it felt, going over bumps, you can hear it audibly.
Is there the knocking noise, or what does it sound like?
Yeah, basically knocking noise.
Cool. All right, let's get started.
All right.
So I've got my Milwaukee half-inch drive impact, but a habit that I like to get into is to break the wheel bolts loose by hand, and that not only saves the tool, but a lot of times it might not bust it loose with the impact anyway, even though it does have a lot of torque. See, these aren't even very tight. A factory, let's go ahead and just zoom in, and there's a little factory pad right here, and we're going to make sure that we keep this jack pad perfectly centered on that. Barely fits, just barely. We'll get the wheel off the ground, and now I'll zip it off. Careful to not scratch up your wheels. So I always like to choke up on this socket and direct it right inside, and then pull out the bolts very carefully. All the time I see people just jamming this thing in here and scratching wheels up. Also, if you notice, my foot is underneath the wheel. On a lot of German cars, this wheel can just fall off when you get all the bolts out. So make sure that the wheel doesn't fall on its face. Start by removing the brakes. So I'm going to turn the steering wheel and get the brakes to where I can get to the caliper bolts here. When you open the door, you want to make sure that this jack is not going. You want to make sure you have a rubber pad on your jack handle. But most of the time it's a good idea just to give yourself a little bit of room right here, and you have to be careful when you're using a screwdriver like this, because if you just willy-nilly jam the screwdriver in here and start prying, you can get in here and damage the pad material. In this case I can see where the rotor is, and I'm just very carefully giving myself just a little bit of room, and that will make sure that whenever I take these big caliper bridge bolts out, the whole thing can just slide off. I gotta have a little bit of clearance to put this socket on these caliper bridge bolts. Then my ratchet will clear this caliper, and let's see if it fits on the top as well. I'm going to get this wear sensor wire out of the way, and then the top one looks just like this. Got enough room to put my ratchet in there. We'll get the old smaller ratchet out, a little easier to handle once it's broken loose. Less cumbersome than a very long handle. What I was about to say was, countless people will say that you shouldn't let the caliper rest on the brake hose. It really depends on how heavy the caliper is, and in general I've had no problem whatsoever with letting the caliper rest on the hose itself. I don't really see too much of a problem with that. But like I said, if it was a super heavy truck caliper, like this is an aluminum caliper, this does really not weigh that much, and I don't feel the least bit guilty about letting it sit right here. Now I wouldn't let it drop. If you were to hang it from your strut or something and it accidentally came off the hanger and then it dropped, that would be way worse. Like I don't think this is bad at all, but that would be way worse than just letting it rest here. There we go. Just get it out of the way. This is just going to keep on spinning if I try to get it loose. So I'd have to put a wrench on this other side. Got a bunch of wrenches right here. Also got these small wrenches. So that's going to fit better right now. It didn't feel like it wanted to fit. So I'm going to move over to my Knipex pliers. These are the 6 inchers. 6 inchers. And I can hold the nut on the back side. And now I'm going to go to my Milwaukee power. Makes my life much easier. Now there's going to be some pressure on this sway bar link because we didn't jack both sides up. So what I'm going to do is thread this back on a little bit, and I could put another jack under here and take this load off the suspension, and that's probably what I'll do, because if you were to force that out, there's a possibility that you could pull these threads and then damage the threads. So I'm going to grab another jack. I'm going to put this jack underneath the ball joint. I don't want to bend this backing plate. If you bend this backing plate and you don't notice it, you'll have brake noise after the repair. Then you have to take it back apart and bend it back into place. So I'm just going to go right on the ball joint. I'm going to load the suspension all the way back up. And if you'll notice, there you go. See, it just fell off, which it was already kind of low. I should have been there to hold it, but it didn't weigh that much. And now it just falls right out. I don't have to sit there and hammer it or be a barbarian or do anything silly. Now I can drop this back down. I don't need it anymore. I don't have a lot of room to pull this ABS wire right here. Normally I would just push it straight back out of here, but I want to be very careful with this wire as well. I think I could probably get away with, this is a good time where you could spray some penetrating oil right here so it pops out of the collar. But I'm going to very carefully take my pry bar and just kind of nudge it out. I can feel where it slides straight out backwards. A little bit stiff, but came out. Now I got some extra room right here. We got to follow this wire all the way down and unbolt it from the back of this hub. So I got my VIM stubby sockets here. I think it's probably maybe a 5mm, maybe it's 4, and it's 5. So that's a little bit difficult to see back there, but this wheel speed sensor is just bolted in right here. It goes to the back of the hub, and now theoretically I should be able to pop that sensor clean out. Sometimes those get stuck in the hub, and I'm just gonna lay this to the side now. Now I gotta figure out if I have to take these control arms apart. I would really rather not if I didn't have to. But I think there's probably not enough room to get this strut all the way out. To get everybody a better view, I'm just gonna go ahead and get this detail out of the way. Now, most of the time I probably wouldn't want to do this because this is another deal where these bolts can snap off into this aluminum hub. These are steel bolts into an aluminum hub. I'm only doing this just to give people a better view. So here we go. This is a better view of what I'm working with here. I haven't done this job before. I'm trying to figure out if I can just take this pinch bolt out, and if I have enough room in these control arms to push this down. I think if I get my spring compressors in here and choke up on the spring and I get this pinch bolt out, I probably have enough room to not take one of these control arms off. I definitely don't need to take both of them off, as far as I'm aware. We'll figure it out. Rigged up my own little compressor. I did this on an Audi before and it seemed to work. I'm going to see if it'll work on this BMW. I'm going to have to ultimately switch over to a wrench, but you might not have this option because I custom made this tool. So maybe this is a bad idea to show, but I can't even go anymore. I need to, my deep well is not long enough. So let me go get her, got a ratchet wrench that I'm gonna grab. That will help me get it the rest of the way. Compress the spring with this jack, and then I don't have to work so hard with that wrench. So see that? There it stopped. And now, I don't think I'm gonna, yeah, I can even thumb them in like this. So I'm just gonna go all the way up. Now I'm gonna get this pinch bolt out. I want to keep these upper strut bolts still in there because whenever I get this pinch bolt out, I'm going to be trying to drop this whole knuckle down, and hopefully I have enough room with this spring compressor in here. So I got my deep well 18 on this side, and I'm most likely going to have to hold the other side with another 18. I'm going to try a stubby. So get the old palm hammer out. Now the other side's starting to spin, so I'm holding it with this stubby. That's another rule of thumb, is you can break stuff loose with these Milwaukee ratchets, but it's usually better just to break it loose with your hand tools and then use it just to run bolts in and out. I'm going to load this back on here and set it to the side. Now, there's this little bracket in there. I'm going to pull it out of the way, and this knuckle is got a space in the back here. I'd show it to you, but maybe when I get this out you can see it better. My pry bar is a little bit long. Typically I would maybe get some type of chisel. This chisel is a little bit long as well. See, I can't really get a hammer in there too well. What's this? Round punch, smaller. Okay, I'm gonna try that with this smaller hammer. Oh yeah. Look, it's coming down easily now. Now I can give it some love taps and pull it down. Will it be enough though? That's the question. It is enough. So, you see this, how this fit in there? This was a round punch, but it was tapered at just the perfect size to where it fit down in there. And all I needed to do, I don't want to overstress this, all I needed to do was get this pinch point separated just enough to where it wasn't gripping around this shaft. Now we need to come up here, see if we can come around this side. And I would prefer to not take this loose if I don't have to. So I didn't know if this ratchet wrench isn't really going to fit in there. So I might have to use the opened inside. And now I really only have to use this wrench on this back one. I'm going to get these two loose with my fast tool. And something like a 13 millimeter, you can disregard what I said earlier because this is not going to be on there too tight with a 13 millimeter. So you can break it loose like this. Now it fits. Now I'm going to hold it. Go ahead and come around this side again. I don't really want it dropping, so even drop the nut. There we go. Got the strut out without disconnecting any of the control arms. Now, and I'm just going to try to zip it out with the impact this time. Now it's just spinning. It's just spinning. So there's a hex on the inside here, but it's still hard to get to. It is a 6mm hex, but you know, another tip or trick, this is the jounce right here, and people are going to give me a hard time about this as well, but I'll tell you what, it's my video. Say what you want in the comments. I've been known to put my pliers right here after I bust this top nut loose, because look, if you put plier marks anywhere on this shaft and it goes past this bottom seal, you're going to eat up the seal. But if you put your pliers all the way up top here, especially after the nut's already busted loose, it's just spinning. This whole shaft is spinning inside the cylinder. The old one, I could care less about the old one. So this doesn't matter anyway, but if you're maybe putting lowering springs on or something, you don't ever want to put your pliers down here lower to where this, you would put plier marks on the shaft that would swipe that seal. So I'm going to put them up here, and I have to think about it. If I'm going this way, I would want to have the pliers this way. So that's how they grab. If I put the pliers this way, they're not grabbing the way they need to. So putting the pliers this way, because whenever I loosen it, it's going to want to spin. So see, I barely had to put any pressure on it at all. And now we're going to make sure that we have all this stuff in order. This little washer right here goes down there. There might be another washer up here, I don't know. Pop this cap off. We're just going to give it some love taps. See, this came off and it went this way, because I see that there's witness marks on it. It went this way. So got it in order, and now I can pull it off. And then, so I'm just going to set this back right there. So here we have the old strut, and if you'll notice, there is a little pit right here. That's interesting. If you see this little pit in here, it seems like I didn't do that with pliers. I barely touched it with pliers. In fact, I didn't make any kind of mar at all with pliers way up here at the top. But if you'll notice this, so it's got a little bit of strut action, but you're not supposed to be able to pull it up. The thing about a strut is it's supposed to go in fast, but then you're supposed to pull up slowly. But you see all this fluid everywhere, the seal is leaking, and it can go in and out really fast. I've seen them to where they were completely shot, to where you could just go like this and there's zero resistance. So that's that. Now we gotta take this to my strut spring compressor and we gotta load it up. First thing I'm gonna do is pull out this right here, and sometimes this rubber insulator is all shot and messed up. And if that's the case, you want to get a new one, especially if your old strut is leaking like this. The oil will deteriorate it and make it crack and fall apart. In this case, we're in good enough shape, still in one piece, and I'm just going to pop it into place. And my strut spring compressor is in the backyard, so whatever's left of this, you know, you could probably buy this stuff, or you could just buy a quick strut and you wouldn't have to do any of this stuff. So this goes on here, and then we've got, this is the little jounce for it. So this is like, if you bottom it out, this is your safety measure, to where you're never really going to fully bottom it out, because it's going to hit this springy deal right here. So I got the new strut mount here. It's a good idea to go ahead and get a new strut mount. If you can zoom in and see, there is some cracks around the side here. Can you pick those up? Yeah. Cracks around the side, and there's a little, you can't really put this on any other way, but someone could forget to put this on altogether, I suppose. So I'm going to take this part off, put it back on right here, and then you want to remember I already put this washer down here, and then it goes like this with the other stuff. So that fits on top of here. So you want to make sure you have all your washers the way they were whenever you took it apart. Make sure that this top insulator's in one piece. If you need this kind of stuff, then it's better just to order it than to put it on without this rubber insulator. You could have noise, and when you turn it you could hear like a noise, or you know, just not very good. So just loading the spring up in here, and you're probably not going to have a fancy tool like this, but sorry. And we've got adjustment mechanisms to make sure that we can level this thing out the way we need to. I could show you the old-fashioned way of doing this, but if I got the tools to make my job easier, then I'm just going to use them. I'm trying to beat the sun anyway. It's getting a little bit dark. So you want to make sure that this is as even as possible in here. This up like this. The only problem is if you come up in here, if I do it like this, I need to be able to make sure that all of these washers and everything are centered. Something like that. And we'll see if that works. I don't know if this is big enough, but this has got like a cone shape on it, and you should be able to center the bolt with something like this. It's not exactly big enough, but it's what I had handy. I got one somewhere. Kind of actually pretty ridiculous. Don't forget to wear your safety glasses. And you want to make sure that this is aligned properly with the end of the spring all the way up in here on the back side here. Can you see that? You want to make sure that this spring is all the way positioned correctly in this bottom rubber insulator. And then it wouldn't be a bad idea to, the nut is actually all the way pretty much flush, but it's up to the lock nut part on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and release it, and then I'm going to screw it down, because I can't, I do have a 3/8 impact, like right angle, that I could put in there, but I think it'll be alright to just loosen at this point. I want to make sure that the top is correctly positioned as well, and it is. So now I'm just going to zip it down the rest of the way. Since the spring is pushing on it, the impact should zip it down until it stops. Make sure. to properly torque this strut down, you would want to hold the inside of this shaft. You see there's a way to hold the inside of this shaft with this hex socket. And then if I had the proper tools, I could have like a pass-through socket like this, and typically it would have something on the outside to where I could hold it, to where I could hold this and tighten it. I don't really have that, but I can still get away with making sure that it's all the way tight by holding the shaft right here and then just putting these pliers around the outside and then counter holding the shaft and right there. See, I was able to get maybe a half turn on it, and that's actually properly torquing it, even though I'm not properly torquing it. That's the backyard method, and that's the method that most of you guys will probably use. And I tightened this thing back down, but I'll tell you what, I probably put them in the wrong position, and this thing's probably going to be in my way, but we'll figure it out. Let's see if I can fit this thing back up in here first. So this little nub right here, it's positioned in a spot up here for this locating pin. So I'm just going to hold it up in there and start it. I don't necessarily need to get all of these tight yet. I'll go ahead and start all of them. I can get this last one. There we go. Now, I don't know if this is going to be in my way or not. It might be. And I just pinched my skin off. Nice, cut down deep. Actually went over further than I thought. There was a couple dowels in there. I didn't have it positioned correctly. So as soon as I got it positioned correctly, it fell right into place. So now I can pull my chisel back out. Probably have to use my pliers. Pull that back out. And then let's get this out of the way. For now, I'll have to jack it back up to put this stabilizer link back in, this sway bar link. We don't want to forget this little bracket here. This went in like such. I didn't theoretically need to take this wheel speed sensor out because I didn't take any control arms or anything out, but you definitely don't want to make sure that you pull this. So we'll take this right here, it goes like such, right there, and then the bolt. With the power tool. And I'm just going to hold this with my pliers. That's what pliers are good for, especially Knipex Cobras. Alright, now I'm going to torque it with my actual ratchet. I've still got this spring compressor on here, so I might be able to put this sway bar link. I know it's way too far up. I gotta take this down. I gotta route this ABS sensor back in here. You see, it pops into right here. And then I have to route it back around here and then bolt it in the back of this hub right here. Getting ready to put this sway bar link back up here. So I gotta jack this whole assembly back up again. So I gotta get this caliper out of my way a little bit. And then we're just gonna get this all the way up to where it's even with that hole. Right about there. Something like that. Now we're gonna lift this caliper back up and I'm just gonna set it right here. If it'll stay. Okay. That's the benefit of having this heat shield off. I can do something like this. Get my 18mm back out, and I'll need to put my pliers behind that again. To get the proper feel on it, I'm using it like a ratchet. There we go. And actually I'll go ahead and take my regular ratchet and make sure it's perfect. Right there. Alright. Now carefully set this to the side again, and we're ready to put our backing plate back on. This actually is powerful enough to snap those 10mm off, so you really have to have a gentle touch if you take them all the way down. Okay, now we're ready for the rotor. Get the bolt back in here. Now we're ready to turn the steering wheel and bolt our caliper. One last time, we want to make sure that this backing plate is not touching the rotor at all. And actually I think it was touching the rotor just a hair. So I bent it back on the bottom, and now we can carefully slide our caliper back on and bolt it back up. And after this, we still have to tighten down our strut mount. Another thing is you want to make sure that this caliper is not twisted, because you could be an idiot, and it's really pretty hard on this one, but I've seen it before. The caliper hose is completely twisted around. It's not a bad idea to use a 1/2 inch drive to tighten this. These caliper bolts get very tight. I've seen to where people don't put them in as tight as they need to put them in, and if you lose some caliper bridge bolts, if these caliper bolts back themselves all the way out, it's unforgivable if a caliper falls off. That's almost as bad as having a wheel fall off. So that's not tight enough. I need to go back and tighten it. I'm gonna put myself inside this wheel well and literally pull up. I could bust myself in the teeth. All wrenches, all opened-end wrenches will open up whenever you're doing a final torque. So you really want to go to your regular wrenches, and we're gonna get the 13. And that's the bad thing about this setup here. I gotta spend the extra time to go all the way through them like a big set of keys. And pull out the 13, and then the closed inside. The closed inside is going to give me the full torque I need. See, I can't get anywhere on the closed. Just for good measure, we're going to do these two with a socket. Now we just got to bolt the wheel back on and we're done. Alright, like and subscribe, Neptown Tuner.